All right, so this is a continuation of what I would say is a review, and today we're going to focus on just fractions. So a little highlight up here, if we are going to be adding or subtracting a fraction, then we must have a common denominator. If we are multiplying or dividing, we have no common denominator. Now that's going to be really, this should be multiplying. That's going to be really important as we go through these. Okay, so here's the first one. First one, 3/7 plus 2/5. So I'm adding. So if I'm adding, I have to have a common denominator. So what is the smallest multiple that both 7 and 5 go into? And hopefully you see that that's 35. So if it's 35, I have to multiply the top and the bottom by 5 on this side, and I multiply the top and the bottom by 7 on this side. So when I do this, I get 15 over 35, 5 times 3 and 5 times 7, plus 14 over 35. Okay, now I'm going to keep the denominator. I don't add those. The only thing that gets added is the top. So I end up with 29 over 35, and that is going to be my simplified solution. Okay, now with this one I have a bunch of negatives. I have negative 2/9, minus 1/2, minus 7/8. So I'm subtracting, so I have to have a common denominator. So I'm looking at these and I see that my denominator is 18. So if my denominator is 18, that means I multiply the top and the bottom by 2. So I have to multiply by 2 to get 18. So I end up with negative 4 over 18. Here, what do I multiply 2 by to get 18? 9. So I have negative 9 over 18 minus 7 over 18. Again, because I'm subtracting, the denominator stays. And in the numerator, I have negative 4 minus 9 minus 7. So that's the same as negative 13 minus 7. Remember, I'm going left to right. So negative 4 times negative 9 is negative 13. So this whole thing becomes negative 20. Now, I'm not finished here because both of these are even. If they're both even, then I can reduce. So this becomes negative 10 over 9. Right? They're both even, so I'm going to cut them in half. So 20 divided by 2 is 10. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now, I'm going to make another note here. So in this class, we are going to always leave as improper. So remember, an improper fraction means you have a bigger number in the numerator. So we're going to leave it that way. Okay, now we look at this next one and it looks really funky. I have a 1/3 divided by 2/5. Now, all of these division signs in a fraction is division. So this is saying 1 divided by 3, divided by 2, divided by 5. So because of that, I'm going to rewrite this a little bit differently. I'm going to call this old school division. And I'm going to say 1/3 divided by, so that's, what in the world? Divided by, old school division, that's this divide right here, 2/5. Now, if you remember back in elementary school, when you did this, we would say keep, change, flip. So this C is change, and this L here is flip. And so what does that look like? And this K, I didn't write this, but this is keep. So keep, change, flip. So keep means this doesn't change, it's the same. So 1/3 keep. Change, I go from division to multiplication. And flip, this 2/5 becomes 5 over 2. Okay, so now what happens is I have multiplication. So if you remember up here, if it's multiplication, there's no common denominator. So we're going to just multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So with addition and subtraction, you keep your denominator. With multiplication, division, you don't. All right, now this one looks a little funky because I have this whole number right here. So if I have a whole number, really what I'm still doing is I'm still subtracting. So I want to make this a fraction. So a lot of times we think of it like this, right? 2 over 1 is the same thing as writing a whole number as a fraction, but I can't subtract these because remember, when I subtract, I have to have a common denominator. So my common denominator here is going to be 7. So if I multiply the top and the bottom by 7, I end up with 14 divided by 7 minus 5 over 7. And this is so easy to check because 14 divided by 7 is 2. So we went back to where we started from. Okay? So Subtracting, I keep my denominator the same, and I have 14 minus 5, which is 9. And remember, we leave it as improper. We leave the big number on the top. Okay, now this one looks a little funky because I have an operation in the numerator and have an operation in the denominator. And so you can solve this two different ways. You can solve this as just solving the top and then just solving the bottom and then coming up here and doing something like we did up here with keep, change, flip. But I'm going to solve this another way. If I look, because I'm adding here and here, I know I have to have a common denominator. And that denominator here, 3, 2, 3, 6. That denominator is going to be 6. So I know that my common denominator for the whole thing, common denominator, is going to equal 6. So if I look at this first guy right here, what do I have to multiply this by to get 6? And I have to multiply it by 2. So I end up with 4 over 6. What do I have to multiply this by to get 6? I have to multiply it by 3. So this becomes 3 over 6. Now I come down here to the bottom. What happens if I multiply this, or it's already 6, so I'm going to leave it as 1/6. And when I do this, how do I get 3 to 6? I multiply the top and the bottom by 6. So now I end up with 7 over 6, and this is 3 over 6. All right, so now I can do this old school again. So I have 7 over 6 divided by 3 over 6. And when I do keep, change, flip, 7 over 6 times 6 over 3. Now, before I multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom, I'm going to cross reduce. And what I have here is I have a 6 and I have a 6. So those go away. I can cross reduce these and I end up with 7 over 3. Now, here's the cool part. If we go back and look about what we have up here, I have a 7 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator. Well, look what I ended up with, a 7 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator. So if we take this whole thing and we multiply by 6 so that we get the same common denominator, we really don't even care about the denominators because it's always going to cancel out. So let's use that logic over here on this. I have a 5, a 2, a 2, and a 10. So my common denominator is going to be 10. So if I'm multiplying this whole thing by 10, so to go from 5 to 10, I'm going to multiply this by 2. So this becomes 4. I'm just going to forget about the denominator now because I'm going to turn all of these into the same denominator, and over here I showed you how that always goes away. So how do I make a 2 into a 10? Multiply by 5. Now I go down here, 2 to 10, I multiply by 5 again, and I already have the 10, so it's just 3. So this whole thing becomes 9 over 8. So while this looks incredibly complicated, right, like, oh, I've got to find a common denominator, and then I'm going to have to divide, really you don't. If you find a common denominator of the whole thing, and then just work the numerators, because I proved to you over here how it goes away. Okay? All right, let's go over here now, and I'm going to show you how to do all of these fractions on your calculator. Now, you will have a period of time where it'll tell you no calculator, but normally, if you've got a fraction, I want you to just use your calculator. There's 2 ways to do this, depending on which type of calculator you have, so I'm going to show you both. Okay, so if you have the plus, you're going to see right here next to the alpha, you see x, t, theta, and n. And you see this little green thing right here, which is a box over a box. That is a shortcut for a fraction. So if you have this calculator, and I want to put this fraction in, so we're going to try this, 9 over 22 plus 15 over 7. I'm going to hit alpha, that gives me the green here. So alpha x, and it gives me this fraction box. And I'm going to say 9 over 22. Now I have to arrow over, and I'm just using my arrows to go up and down between the numerator and the denominator. But now for me to get the plus, I have to actually arrow out. So now I'm clear over here, and I can put my plus in. All right, now let's say that you don't have a calculator that has this on here. I have in the directions up here the other way that you can get to it, and that's going to be alpha, so the green alpha button again, and then we're going to go up here to y equals. And when you hit y equals, this little thing pops up, and number 1 here is numerator over denominator. So that's what we want. So you're just going to hit enter, and it brings up the same box. So again, it's going to be alpha y equals and then enter. So if you have this calculator, you might want to highlight that so you remember. So now I'm going to say 15 divided by 7. And what I get is 393 over 154, which is what the answer is. Okay? All right, so now sometimes we're going to see something where we have an operation in here. There's no reason to have to simplify and do the whole thing. Just put the whole thing in. So I've got my numerator to find your fraction bar, and I'm just going to say 13 minus 22. I put the whole thing in the numerator. And then I pop down to the denominator, and I say 53 minus 26. And what this does is it gives me this fraction, and this fraction becomes negative 1/3. All right, now same thing with this one. We're going to plug all of this in, and when we plug it into the calculator, we want it to look exactly like this. So if there's parentheses, do parentheses. If there's powers, do powers. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So from a blank screen, the first thing I'm going to do is 21 squared. So I'm going to put 21 in, and then to get the squared, that's this button right here where it says x squared. So if I hit x squared, it squares the 21. So you see that what I have in my calculator, what I have in my paper, the same thing. Okay, so minus 5, and now I want to do parentheses. So I'm going to put a parenthesis in, which is right here, but then I have a fraction. So I go back up and I put my fraction bar, and I'm going to have 31 divided by 2. I have to arrow out, and now I can close my fraction, or sorry, close my parentheses. Super important, okay? So then I'm going to add, I'm going to have another parenthesis, another fraction. I have 14 divided by 3, arrow out. Now, how do I get this 4 up there? So this 4, to get this 4, you're going to use the caret button, and the caret button is this guy. It is the button that's right above the division sign. So if I hit that caret button, it's going to put it up and make it an exponent, and now I want to make that a 4. So before you hit enter, you need to look at it and make sure it matches completely. Your parentheses are in the right places, your powers are all in the right places, your exponents, everything's the same, and it looks exactly the same. So when I hit enter, I get this awfully huge number here. 135,719 divided by 162. Okay, so again, just like this. Just like this. Don't break it down. You want to be able to compare it. It needs to look the same. Okay, I'm going to pause it, and I want you to do this. Actually, hold on. I'm going to show you how to do this. So I see that I have fractions and fractions. So the first thing is I have to make my first fraction bar. So make a fraction bar. And that fraction bar that I have right here is this primary fraction bar. So when I'm in my numerator, I'm going to create another fraction bar. And now I can type in 1/6, arrow over and subtract, put another fraction bar to get 5/7. Then I'm going to go down in the denominator, and I'm going to add another fraction bar, and I'm going to make that 3/2. Okay, now if I look at this, it looks exactly in my calculator like it looks on my paper. That's what you need. It needs to look exactly the same. And then we just hit enter, and we end up with negative 23 over 63. Okay? All right, last thing that we're going to do. Sometimes when we plug something in the calculator, we want to graph it. So it says graph this equation. Okay, now this equation is a fraction. That's why we're doing this right now. And so when we do this, I've got all the calculator steps right here for you. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say y equals. So that's this button up here, y equals. Okay? Now, if you've got anything there, clear it and make sure that you don't have anything in any of these. And what I'm going to do is I have to put my fraction bar back in. So we're going to put the fraction bar back in, and I'm going to use x. I'm going to use this x that's right here. So x plus 2. I'm going to go down to the denominator, and I'm going to say x minus 1. So it looks exactly like it looks on my paper right here. Okay, so you see x plus 2, and then I'm going to have x minus 1 in the denominator. And now when I graph this, I want to hit, actually, hold on, I got to turn something off because I know my calculator's set differently. So here I have this, and now I want to graph this, so I'm going to hit the zoom button, and then I'm going to hit 6, and it's going to create a graph for me, and I'm going to just sketch this graph over here. So I see that it's going to cross here at about -3, and it's going to cross here at -2, and it doesn't look like it crosses at all over here in this first quadrant. So I'm going to have something that's going to look like this, and then over here it's going to look like this and go through those 2 points. Okay, so you see how these look very similar. These two graphs look very similar. All right, go ahead and practice this.